guys, so today we're going to start talking about area, and we start with parallelograms in area, and so before we do that we need to go over some vocabulary terms. Area is going to be pretty fun. You get to learn some formulas and soft shapes and stuff, but first we have to learn some of the basic stuff. So some of these vocabulary words are going to be terms that you have learned before, and then some of them may be new to you. So if you follow directions, you've already written all of these down. Hopefully they sound basically familiar because you've written them down. And so let's go ahead and go over them. So first we have polygon. A polygon is a closed plane figure made up of several line segments that are joined together. So some examples of polygons could be a triangle, could be a square, could be an octagon. All of those are closed shapes. Could be a hexagon, could be a rectangle, could be a parallelogram. Alright, so that's a polygon. It's a closed shape. Alright, quadrilateral. Quadrilateral. When you hear that, you should hear that first part, quad. That should signal to you 4. Okay, so if it's saying it's got 4 something, it's telling you that it's actually a polygon with 4 sides. So there are several types of quadrilaterals. One you guys should know really well is a square. That has 4 sides, right? Then think about other things that you know have 4 sides. Hopefully you're thinking of a rectangle. And then maybe new to you is a parallelogram, which is what we're going to start with. So parallelograms are just like squares and rectangles. They have 4 sides. Okay, so a rectangle is a quadrilateral with 4 90-degree angles. And when I say that, that means that a square is also a rectangle because it is a quadrilateral with 4 90-degree angles, isn't it? So a square is a quadrilateral with 4 equal sides and 4 90-degree angles. So a square is only different from a rectangle because it's got equal sides. Okay, now a parallelogram is a quadrilateral with opposite sides parallel. That sounds a little confusing, but basically what it means is it's going to have a left and a right side, and those lines are going to run parallel to each other, which means they're going to run right next to each other, but they never touch. Okay, remember, a parallel line never touches. It goes on and on forever, but it never touches. Well, a parallelogram has sides that run parallel. So they can run parallel vertically, which is up and down. They can run horizontally, which is side to side. They can even run diagonally, as long as they're running at that same degree. Okay, so that's a parallelogram. Remember that perimeter, you learned this in 3rd or 4th grade, is the sum of all the lengths of all the sides of the polygon. Area is the number of square units that cover a shape or figure. So we're going to come back to that in a minute to understand area, but just know that area is the number of square units, it's what we use to measure, that covers a shape or figure. Okay, base is a cool word. Instead of with, you might use it. Base is the bottom of a shape or a plane figure, or even a 3-dimensional shape. It's the bottom, the base. Height, that would be what you might have said was length before. So height is the measurement from the base, which is the bottom, to its highest point. And then decompose is to break something up. Think about if you leave a pile of leaves in your front yard over the winter time. In the beginning of the winter, it's a big fluffy pile of leaves. but then it starts to sink down, sink down, sink down, and it's not just because it's getting wet and soggy, but if you look at the leaves on the bottom, you'll see they're starting to get little holes in them. They're breaking down, they're decomposing, composing. You can do that with shapes as well. So that's decomposing, okay? All right, so now that we have all of our vocabulary words, I want to look at a polygon first, okay? I'm sorry, a parallelogram. So let's look at this. I'm going to move my notes over here. Let's look at this parallelogram. This is a parallelogram. Now, bear in mind that a rectangle and a square can also be a parallelogram because the lines run parallel. But when we think of a parallelogram, we're more thinking about this type of a parallelogram, one that has diagonal lines, okay? And even if I turn it to the side, those lines are still diagonal, okay? So what I want you to realize is that a parallelogram is just like a rectangle in the sense that, so all of this green space, if I decompose it and break it up, it would be a rectangle. So I'm going to show you what I mean. So let's consider that this is the base, because it's the bottom, and this is the top, okay, or its highest point. All right, let's look at it now. If I take a line from the bottom point, the base, and I draw it up through the shape, I can actually cut that shape, okay? And if I cut that shape, I'm decomposing it, okay? And so I printed these ones in blue so that you can see it, okay? So, this is this side, and this is this side of that blue dotted line. So that's my parallelogram. If I did cut it from the base to the top of the shape, its highest point, and I move it over to the side, it becomes a rectangle, doesn't it? My papers are kind of curly, so it's a little bit harder to tell, but it does become a rectangle. If I hold it down, it is, I'm trying to see if I can hold it down, a rectangle. Even if I turn it, it is a rectangle. So it's no longer a parallelogram. And so for that reason, the area formula for a parallelogram is exactly the same as an area formula for a rectangle or a square. Okay? So now, let's talk about that. Back to our notes. So the area formula for a parallelogram let me go straight for you guys. The area of a parallelogram is the product. Hopefully everybody knows when they hear product, they should be thinking multiply. The product of its base and its height. Okay. So product of its base and height. So that means base times height. All right, so this is what the formula looks like. Area equals base times height. remember that the B and the H are variables. Remember, because you're going to put a number in there. And because they're variables, you don't need a multiplication sign in between. Can you write it with a multiplication sign in between? Absolutely, you totally can. But the correct way to write it is this way. And it's really important to learn that because you're going to use it and add things to it later on, and then you're not going to want that multiplication symbol in there, okay? So, let's take a look really quickly at what I was talking about with the square units. Okay, so here are some shapes. Alright, they're all parallelograms, and they're on a grid, okay? And what I want you to look at is the corner of each shape, okay? The corner of each shape can take you from 1 square to 2 squares to 3 squares to 4 squares to 5 squares to 6 squares to 7 squares, 8, 9, 10, and 11. Even though it's not fully in the square, even though it's only a triangle in the square, you still count the full length of the line, okay? So we had 11 on there, okay? Same thing is for the height, but we can't use this slanted line. We never use the slanted line. Just remember, we never use a slanted line. The reason why we never use the slanted line is your math will come out all like crazy wonky, okay? Because the straight line isn't the height, okay? So the straight line, the slanted line isn't the height. The height is, remember, go to your bottom corner, wherever your bottom corner is of the base, right there, and go up to the top of the shape, the highest point, from right there to right there. That's the height, okay? So now I count the squares that are on the height line. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay? And then so now I know that the base is 11 and the height is 6. Okay? So remember before I said, I'm going to do my math over here. I said that area equals base times height. So that means the area of A, which is area, or A of A, equals base is 11, height is 6, times 6. So A of A, and when I'm saying A of A, I'm saying area of A because this is shape A, okay? Area of A equals 66 square, what is it? I don't know what it is because it doesn't say inches, it doesn't say feet, it doesn't say anything. It's just units. If you don't know what it is, you say square units, okay? So the way to do that is you can either do units squared, or you can say 66 U square. Okay, U for units. Okay, so let's take a look at parallelogram B. Parallelogram B, again, I'm going to go from my base and go up to my highest point. Now, I can use this side of my base. As a matter of fact, I'll use a different color so that you can see it. I can use this side of my base, but it's a little trickier if I want to use the outside corner. So if I want to use this corner right here, I'm using purple, okay, cut it up a little bit. I have to use this line and come out as well and match it. Okay, so now
that could be my height. All right, so my height for B is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. Remember, we never use a slanted line. Ever, ever, ever. And I'm going to show you why right now. If I use this slanted line and I start at the bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, this one works out perfectly. Darn it. Okay, it's not always going to work out. But this one does work out. Normally it doesn't work out. Okay. Remember, I could have also, instead of doing this line for B, I could have gone up here and counted there. So I could have gone right there. Okay? I have my height. Now I need my base. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So my base is 7. So for area of B equals base times height. Okay, so notice that both times when I started doing the work for my area solution, I started by writing the formula. Automatically, every time, start with the formula. Okay? So, now I know that area equals base times height, which is base is 7, and height is 7. So that means area of B equals 49 units squared. Okay? Now when you're doing this by hand, you need to make sure that you're putting your square part. You can't just say 49. You have to say that it's square because that's what tells me it is area. Okay? Alright, looking at C. Again, I can find my height by going up through the shape, or I could decide to come over here to the side, and I can go and now I can use this line. Okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But remember, when you're doing the base, you're only counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So for C, area of C equals base times height. Area of C equals 5 times 5. Notice when I change it to numbers, I'm using a multiplication sign, okay? So that's going to be 25. So area of C equals 25 units squared. Okay, go ahead and pause the video really quick and do D and F on your own, and let's see if you come up with the correct answers. Alright, so hopefully you paused it and you did it. So let's take a look at D. D, the height is 1, 2, 3, 4. And the base is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Right? Area equals base times height. Area equals 4 times 8. Area equals 32 units squared. Easy. Alright, for E. This one is running up and down, but you just find, this time you're going to go like this. And don't forget, you can turn these too if it makes it easier. So you can turn it sideways if that makes it easier for you. You don't have to, but you can. Alright, so my base is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. My height is 1, 2. Area equals base times height. Area equals 9 times 2. Area equals 18 units squared. Alright? Okay. So now, what about shapes when they're not on the grid? When we don't have a grid? Alright? That's easy.
easy. When they're not on the grid, we usually get our measurements. We just need to know how to look at them so that we get them and understand them right, okay? So, A, notice that this is the base, 12 meters, and this is the height, 14 meters, okay? And whenever they do that, usually in textbooks and tests and things like that, you'll see that they add this extra square in the corner of the imaginary line that they draw. And what I want you to think about that is, one, the reason why they do that is because this and this right here form a right angle. Okay, and remember, right angles are on squares, so now you kind of have a square there, don't you? But also, you can imagine it as an H. So that's your height. Okay? So if you just look at it like, oh look, they drew a line and then they drew an H. That's your height. Okay? Okay, so area equals, go ahead, fill it in, base times height. Next, area equals, which one's your base? Put it first, 12, times 14, that's your height. And now you gotta solve it. And you can use calculators on this, just to do the quick math, because what I'm more concerned about is that you are learning the formulas and learning to fill them in correctly so that you can solve them correctly, okay? So you can use a calculator for 12 times 14. I don't have one out, so I'm going to have to come to the side and do a little side math. 14, 8, 2, 0, 14. We got 168. So my area equals 168. Okay. Oh, sorry. Meters squared. Okay. B. For B, I'm looking at, hopefully you guys can see that that's 4 feet on the inside, 8.5 feet on the outside. So area equals, my base is going to be 8.5, and I know it's sideways, but the base can be sideways. I can change 8.5 to 8.5, or I could have done it with fractions. That's fine too, however you want to do it. Times, I know this is the height because it's got the H. 4. So I know, sorry, I know I don't have that in my head, so I have to go times 4. Area equals 34 feet squared. Okay. Let's do one more. Remember, area equals base times height, and remember, I write that formula first all the time. I forgot to do it over here, but I'm usually really pretty good about it. I write it all the time because this is the easiest formula. Other formulas are going to get harder. If you're always in the habit of writing your formula, you won't forget what you're looking for, okay? Area equals, my base is 20. My height is 25. And now I've got to do a little bit of side math. 0, 0, 10, 4, 5. All right. I'm trying to think if there's anything I want to tell you. If you want to keep practicing before you do today's assignment, you can go ahead and do 2 and 3.
Don't bother doing that. So if you want to keep practicing, go ahead and pause the video and do 2 and 3 on your own, okay? And then you're going to have a worksheet. So when you go in to do today's assignment, you're going to see this worksheet is loaded in, all right? And what you're going to have to do is you're on a piece of paper, you're going to solve the problems. And then in the quiz, all you're doing is entering the answers, okay? So you're not going to see the shapes in the quiz. You have to look at the worksheet and you have to do the math and then load your answers into the quiz, okay? And I will see you again tomorrow.